It was warm for Easter, which fell that year on the first Sunday in April. Dad didn't want to go to the Easter service. After Mom left, he'd pretty much stopped going to church. On Easter Sunday, he said he was too busy with the motorcycle. "I've almost got this thing running," he said, as I was leaving for church. "I can't stop now." Fine with me, I thought. I was mainly going for the egg roll after church. It was always fun to see the pettiness, cheating, and downright ruthlessness that arose out of people who had just celebrated the risen Lord. "All right," Preacher Huffman said after the service. "Everyone listened to Verna for instructions." We were gathered, 40-some people in the grass between church and the church hall. "Does everyone have a hard-boiled egg?" Mrs. Verna Hartzell asked. "If you don't, now's the time to get one. I dyed 5 dozen eggs, so I know there's enough for everyone, including Ringo, who I imagine has eaten half a dozen by now." She would never forgive Myron's dog for dragging her cats around by their neck fat. "Now," she continued, "men and boys, line up on the church side of the yard. Women and girls, stay on this side." "The battle of the sexes," Myron observed gleefully. He and Ringo were wearing matching purple bandanas for Easter. Mrs. Hartzell glared at him. "I will remind everyone," she said, curling her lip, "that even though we are outside, we are still in God's eyesight and earshot. So let's please keep our hearts and tongues clean for His sake as well as ours." "How's this egg roll work again?" Mayor Roland Prell asked. "I can never remember." "It's simple," Mrs. Crumple said from the ladies' side of the yard. "We take turns rolling eggs toward the center of the yard. Your side rolls an egg and our side rolls an egg. You want the eggs to hit. Whoever's egg cracks is out." "That's right," said Preacher Huffman, "because only one egg will crack. It's the miracle of Jesus." "Come on, let's start," whooped one-armed Dallas Emery. He always took great pride in doing well in the egg rolls. Most everyone had forgiven him for the year he brought a white marble egg to the competition. He got to the final round before anyone realized why his egg wasn't cracking. "All right, we're ready for our first rollers," Mrs. Hartzell announced. "Ladies, pick someone. Gentlemen, you choose too." It was Myron versus Mrs. Crumple. I took a step behind Mayor Prell. I'd been hiding from Mrs. Crumple for months, ever since I missed my first piano lesson. 1, Mrs. Hartzell said, holding up her index finger. 2, 3, roll. Mrs. Crumple swooped low and rolled her egg with dignity. She looked like a retired ballerina. Myron rolled his egg like he was at a bowling alley. Ringo ran after both eggs and swallowed them whole, shell and all. "Disqualified!" Mrs. Hartzell proclaimed, either outraged or delighted. I couldn't tell which. "Aw, heck, Ringo," Myron complained. "Sorry about that, Mrs. Crumple." "Not a problem," Mrs. Crumple answered with a smile. She'd had a respectable roll, and that's all that really mattered. "Get over here, Ringo," Myron demanded. The guilty but thrilled dog ran across the yard, dragging his belly in the grass and thumping his tail. Everyone laughed except Mrs. Hartzell. Ringo jumped up and licked her face in passing. "Get that dog out of here," Mrs. Hartzell commanded. Next up were Izzy and Carmen. "I want to beat you," Carmen said with a wicked smile, "because you've been delivering mail to my restaurant later and later." "You talk a good game," Izzy sneered, "but let's see what you've got." 1, Mrs. Hartzell said, holding up a finger. 2, 3, roll. Carmen hurled her egg with vengeance toward the center of the yard. Izzy took 2 giant steps forward and did the same. "Cheater!" Carmen yelled. "He cheated! Did you see what he did? He waited till I rolled, then he rolled. It's a trick." "I didn't do anything wrong, did I, Mrs. Hartzell?" Izzy asked. "You weren't standing far enough back," Mrs. Hartzell repeated sternly, "but that was my mistake. I forgot to mark the starting lines." She looked around and saw me. "Benny, run down to the basement of the church hall and get me 2 pieces of rope." I did as told. The church hall basement was musty and damp, but everything was neatly stacked and labeled on shelves. Christmas ornaments were next to Santa suit. Badminton rackets and net were next to tablecloths square and tablecloths round. I couldn't find any rope, so I grabbed 2 rulers from the yardstick's ruler shelf. I ran with them up the stairs and out in the yard. "Will these work?" I asked, handing the rulers to Mrs. Hartzell. I noticed while standing under her that she had several whiskers on her chin, like a man or a cat. "Yes," she said, "put one on either side. Now listen closely, everyone. You must stand behind the rulers. Izzy and Carmen, roll again." Izzy and Carmen stood across from each other with their replacement eggs. They rolled. Carmen ran to the center of the yard to see the results. "Izzy's egg is cracked! Izzy's egg is cracked!" Carmen chanted, holding up her opponent's egg and wiggling her bottom. Izzy is eliminated from the competition, Mrs. Hartzell announced. Carmen has made it to the next round. Carmen danced her way to the back of the ladies' line. Izzy retreated to the sideline, muttering something about overpriced enchiladas. I looked around for Myron and Ringo. They weren't there, and since I'd forgotten my egg in the church hall basement, I wandered away from the competition and around the corner to Myron's shop. Lately on Sundays, he'd been playing Jesus Christ Superstar and Quadrophenia. Between the two albums, there were 4 records. It gave Myron time to run errands, hit a nearby flea market, or go to church if he felt like it. And if the music ended before he got back to the station, he just apologized for the interruption, flipped the stack of records over, and played the B-sides. It's not like his listening audience was going to complain, especially on a Sunday when almost everyone was at church. So when I opened Myron's shop door, I was surprised to hear his voice coming through several radios in the front room. Who could he possibly be interviewing on Easter Sunday? Only as I walked toward the back of the shop did I realize he wasn't doing an interview. He was announcing something. I poked my head around the kitchen door and saw Myron sitting in a chair. His eyes were closed. His face was serious. He was leaning back so far that the chair was balanced on 2 legs. He was holding the microphone tight right up to his mouth. It's the bottom of the 9th, and the score is 2 runs apiece for the Cardinals and the Cubs. St. Louis needs this win. Let's see if slugger Myron Casey can work his magic. Last year, the KZ Kid, as he's called, hit .356 and drove in 115 runs. Mighty impressive for the slugger from tiny Dennis Acres, that little town of big dreams. The pitcher Calvin Summer winds up, throws, and it's strike 1. Casey is not happy with that call, but he's shaking it off. Yes, he is. And now here's the windup in the pitch. Casey swings, and he hits it. It's going deep into the outfield. This ball's going back, 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 back. This one's going all the way. I don't know if we'll ever see this ball again, folks. Adios. Leave it to Myron Casey to hit the game-winning round tripper in the bottom of the... I couldn't help it. I was laughing. Myron opened his eyes and saw me. Oh, he said, putting his chair back on solid ground. I didn't know anyone was listening. You're good, I said. You're really good. Thanks, Myron replied, grinning widely. You want in the game? Yeah. Myron closed his eyes again and turned on his baseball announcer voice. Critics are calling it a trick, a hoax, an optical illusion, but Benny Summer has the magic touch, folks. There's no doubt about it. So far this year, he's pitched 17 no-hitters, and it doesn't look like anything or anyone will stop him. The kid's got such a supple wrist, magic fingers, man. I laughed. Myron opened his eyes. Keep going, I said. Myron continued. He's a good-looking kid, tall, about 6'1", lean and mean at 180. I was holding my stomach. I was laughing so hard. I was one of the tallest kids in my class, but nowhere near 6 feet tall or 180 pounds. Last time we had to get on a scale in health class, I weighed 72 pounds. But boy, can this kid pitch, Myron said, his eyes still closed. Curveballs, fastballs, rising fastballs with a twist of lemon lime. He can do 'em all, and when he does, the crowd goes wild. Just listen to him roar as Benny walks out on the field. He waves, tips his hat. Always a gentleman, this Summer kid. I heard the cowbells clang above the shop door. Myron must have heard them too because he straightened up. We hope you've enjoyed this special broadcast, Myron said into the microphone, and now we'll return to side 3 of Quadrophenia by the British group known simply as The Who. He dropped the needle on the record. We tiptoed out of the kitchen and closed the door. I was still laughing when I saw Miss Tina Turnipson standing in Myron's front room. Her face was deathly white. Her eyes were red. Clearly, she was going to either cry or vomit. You won't believe it, Miss Turnipson said. You just won't believe it. What? Myron asked. Are you okay? What is it? I don't know what we're going to do, she said, shaking her head. This is a disaster. It's all my fault. She burst into tears. Just take your time, Tina, and tell me what it is, Myron pleaded. I was at my grandparents' house for Easter, she said through her tears. They live in Tulsa. I just got home a little while ago and found this in my mailbox. She held out a piece of paper like it was a dead squirrel. Read it for yourself. Myron's eyes quickly scanned the page. What? How? I don't know, Miss Turnipson wailed. It must have been my essay or that stupid drawing, but we won. Dennis Acres won the America's Most Charming Small Town contest. Why is that bad? I asked. Because, sobbed Miss Turnipson, it means representatives from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce are coming here in 5 weeks to meet us in person. They'll find out we're not what I said we were. They'll find out what a miserable little town Dennis Acres really is. Aw, shoot, Myron said. It's not that bad here, is it? Yes, it is, Miss Turnipson cried. It's ugly as sin and dull as dishwater, and now everyone's going to know. We'll be the laughing stock of America.